I have another science question, for Sam this time. Can we survive on just a diet of insects?
That's a great question. I'm trying to get some visuals pulled up here. Well, I think that the first thing to say would be that surviving on a diet of any one single thing is probably problematic in and of itself. Human beings, just like all other animals, evolved eating a varied diet, whatever we were able to find in nature. And even today, it's very common for us to get our nutrition from a really wide range of sources. And so I would just caution at the very beginning of this that I think that even though what we're going to do is sort of break down, what are in insects, what kind of nutritional value do you get from an insect, and could you get legitimate nutritional value from an insect, we should just remember that true nutrition probably looks like a very complex and varied diet where you're getting proteins, fats, and carbohydrates from a really wide range of sources. But that said, let's jump to the picture on my screen really quick. This is an image of my pyramid, which is a more recent update to the food pyramid, which is the US government's way of telling you what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. And what they've tried to do here is sort of give, it used to be that they ranked foods in terms of hierarchy, and they'd say all the things in the base are the most important, and they get less important and maybe worse for you as you go up the pyramid. And that those ideas have kind of fallen by the wayside, and so today what they're doing is trying to say that you should essentially get relatively even parts. And my graphic here is not very clear, but if you could see it, it would say relatively even portions of grains, vegetables, fruits, dairy products, meat, and then a smaller amount of meat and beans, and then a really small amount of sugars and refined sugars and fats. So again, this is the US government trying to tell you you need all of these different things to be healthy. But if you really break it down, like, what do we actually need to eat to be alive? Like, what does the food that we eat get broken down to? And really, all food gets broken down into three different things. Ultimately, you're eating some combination of carbohydrates, which is another word for sugars, or we tend to think of sugars as being carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, lipids, so fats, or proteins and amino acids. Amino acids are just the building blocks of protein. So the question would be, what kind of nutritional value do these insects provide? I found this really interesting article called The Nutritional Value of Insects for Human Consumption. And it's a long article that I was kind of skimming through earlier in the show when I realized that this would be one of the questions that I might potentially have to answer. If you look here, let's see, what do we got here? So I'm just going to pick something at random here. So locusts and grasshoppers have a protein content of 14 to 18 grams per 100 grams of fresh weight. Fresh weight meaning, I assume, living or recently live, so still probably full of water weight also. So that's a really significant amount of protein there that you get in grasshoppers, and you can see it increases. That's one variety of grasshoppers. There's this other variety of grasshoppers that has 13 to 28 grams. These things, chapulines, which is apparently a Mexican insect, 35 to 48 grams of protein. Scroll down further in this article, there's some really interesting stuff about the fat content of some different insects. Maybe don't think of insects as being very fatty. We think of like a fatty cut of beef or something like that. But you can see here in termites, there's 49% of termites in dry matter of termites is actually a fat content. And you can see that's divided between saturated fats and monounsaturated fats in termites. Here on the right-hand side, we've got this key that either says SFA or MUFA or PUFA. And that stands for saturated fat, SFA, monounsaturated fat, that's MUFA, M-U-F-A, and polyunsaturated fat, PUFA, right? And I'm not going to get into too much detail about the differences there, but suffice it to say that monounsaturated fats are largely considered extremely healthy. And although saturated fat has been maligned for a long time, nutritional science is really coming around to the idea that saturated fat is super beneficial, and we're starting to get a little bit away from polyunsaturated fats, particularly because we consume as a society so much vegetable oil that we get really an insane amount of polyunsaturated fats, way more than our ancestors would have gotten, and it's speculated that that might be part of health concerns that we see here in the United States. Anyways, I can't get into too much detail in this article. There's so many cool things that it mentions, but I did want to find there was one really cool part where it compared here we go. Beef versus insects, an example of the mealworm. So this is a comparison between just beef and mealworms, straight up, right? And so it says macronutrient composition here. It says the fat content of beef is higher than that of mealworm larvae. Beef has a slightly lower moisture content than mealworms and is marginally higher than protein and metabolizable energy. So beef, slightly higher amount of protein and energy, slightly less fat. You can see here on amino acids, beef is higher in glutamic acid, lysine, methionine, and a few others. So these are all amino acids. These are building blocks of proteins. And so and so it says it's lower in a variety. So these ones right here, and I'm not going to go through all these, but again, tyrosine, alanine, these are different amino acids that mealworms have more of, right? Fatty acid content, beef contains more of certain kinds of fatty acids like palmitic acid and stearic acid, which are both considered very healthy. But you can see that there's higher amounts of linoleic acid present in mealworms. So I'm getting into maybe some real specifics here, but the general idea is that mealworms compare really favorably to insects. Here's another comparison, a visual graphic comparison of beef and grasshoppers. And so you can see that this is per 100 grams of beef or grasshopper. So you can see from the calorie perspective up in the top right, beef provides more calories, 271 calories per 100 grams, whereas grasshoppers provide only 153. And you can see beef beats out grasshoppers in both protein and fat, but does not beat them on calcium and iron. So we can think of insects as having a lot of those kind of mineral, vitamin, nutrient values. But something that's not represented here in this graphic is just how much easier it is to grow and raise grasshoppers than it is to grow and raise beef. We can grow grasshoppers by the billions in ways that are relatively humane, although I guess maybe it's not totally humane for insects, although on the other hand, we don't tend to worry about insects as much from are we treating them in a humane way perspective. But beef we do, and for anybody who pays attention to this stuff, you'll probably know that the cattle industry in the United States is responsible for mass amounts of pollution, mass amounts of a lot of waste of water. It takes an insane amount of water to produce just a single gallon or a single pound of beef. And you know, on top of all this, we have to raise mammal animals that aren't so different from you and I, from a young age, raise them up to near adulthood, and then you know, slaughter them to produce meat. Now I'm a meat eater and I'm a proponent of eating meat. I think that it's a healthy choice, but I do think that our industrial food system and the food system that provides the meat that we eat is highly problematic. And so when we look at the idea of substituting beef and poultry or protein with insect protein, there are a lot of real cool potentials out there in the there's a lot of potential for that idea. I just wanted to show this one last graphic. This just shows, it says 1,900 species eaten worldwide, population percent by order. So this breaks them down into larger groups of insects. 31% of, oh, sorry, I've got to end this. I'm talking too much. Anyways, check out that graphic. Eating insects might save the world someday.
I like your theory though. I like you're like, all right, I'm gonna.
I don't even realize. Did we go too long on the experiment?
That sounds like a terrible future.
Terrible future, but we're having
I don't really like it that much
They
either.
say McDonald's is already looking at what it's going to take to replace its burgers with insect protein.
They didn't start that already?
They've started the research. They haven't actually done it.
No, I don't like it.
Yeah.